Yeah, hey everybody. This is Ian from Mindful Marketplace, and welcome back to Serve at Scale. This is the private community podcast where we look at interesting and innovative ways that you can 10x your output, your audience, your impact, and ultimately your income on a bootstrap budget. All right, so this is going to be republished, I believe, on YouTube. Pretty much all the audios that I upload to Transistor, which is the podcast platform that we use for these, get auto-published. So you should also be able to hear this on YouTube. And if you want the PDF that comes with this, you have to join the community to get access to that. And that just essentially is a script that we're going to continue to optimize and improve and tweak and critique as we iterate on this email campaign. So essentially, what I'm doing right now with the email outreach that we're using in our community for authors and people who are pretty famous in the world that we're trying to appeal to their attention at a minimum to get them interested in joining this brand new community that we're launching in October for mindfulness authors and teachers and coaches who are a little bit higher have a higher name recognition than folks who are operating in the local communities. So we're targeting people who have more, let's call it brand gravitas or cachet, and who are generally folks who are, a bit better known. And one of the things, this email campaign that I'm writing now, or that I'm recently created, is getting over a 50% response rate at this point. And I'm going to share with you, and most email campaigns get far less than that. Certainly most of the ones that I've created in the past have done far worse than that. And I'm going to share a couple of very simple tweaks that you can make, or let me restate that. I'll share a couple tweaks that I've made and maybe some suggestions about how you can emulate this approach in your own brand, business, your own outreach for your own community. And I'll caveat this by saying there are some unique qualities to this particular community that you may not have. So you may have to be a little bit more imaginative with respect to how you actually launch this on your own. Okay, so if you've followed my email outreach advice for any length of time, and I've been writing about email outreach for years now, the most important parts of any email outreach campaign are the obvious ones. The subject line, in other words, the first thing that people see. Number two, how you address the person. And number three, obviously, what your appeal is in the actual email itself. Now, you don't want to sell anything, obviously, in an email of this sort. If it's a cold email, you want to personalize it. Obviously, I've recommended this and I stand by this. You want to use their name in the subject line, and you want to use their name again in the first line. So you want to, there's an old adage by I don't even know if he's still living or not, to be honest, hopefully he is, but a copywriter from 20 years ago or 50 years ago actually, who was writing copy that was notoriously good in the direct mail era. And I'm not going to give his name actually now, because I've just kind of questioned whether he's still living, and I'm embarrassed to actually now say his name. And I don't know him personally, and I don't necessarily agree with all of the sorts of campaigns that he would work on. But something that he said years ago that stuck with me was, if you really want to capture people's attention with a letter, then you make the letter all about them, right? So you would say, this email is about Ian's life, or everything about Ian's life below, or something like that, with regard to me, right? Because people are gonna be curious. What about my life is in this email? So always including people's names in the email and using it a couple times. I will sometimes even use a token, depending on the email service that we're using, to add their name a third time, like at the bottom. If you're doing this manually, this can be a little bit more challenging, but you would add, because you have to add it in yourself rather than using tokens. But anyway, that aside, so those two things are important, but they're not what is really generating for us this huge bump in response rate. And what is, because we're targeting a very unique niche in this case, we're targeting published authors and folks who have written books that are available on Amazon, and we want to actually include them in this new community and their books. So saying in the first, after addressing them by name, saying that I recently was introduced to their book and really liked it, right? So we're actually citing something very specific about something they have published in the world, and I'm commenting on the book in a very specific way. So I'll say something, and again, this takes a lot more prep time than generally just sending out cold email, but going to Amazon and downloading a free chapter or just opening the book and reading I'll use like the physical copy version, because that you don't have to download anything, you don't have to get a free sample, you can just access the first chapter, and I'll start reading the introduction or the first couple pages or whatever amount I feel is appropriate to get some unique insight that I can then refer to in this email. And then I'll use that in the email. So I would say, hi, Ian. My name is Ian from Mindful Marketplace, and we are hoping blah, 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 blah. Or actually, before I even got to that, I would say something like, I recently started reading this book that you've written, and you cite the book obviously, and I really found your thoughts on your childhood really impactful, because I had a similar experience, or my dad was A, B, and C, or the neighborhood that I grew up in was like this, or my mindfulness teacher was also so-and-so, or whatever it is that you can use to build rapport in that very first paragraph. And then you simply follow up with an offer that is predicated on them contacting you or scheduling a call, but you don't want to sell anything. You simply want to say, do you have the time to discuss? And this is, what you're going to be offering, right? So the thing that you're offering, you don't offer in the email, but you offer a tease about what that could be. Like we specialize in bringing, books that are classic but are maybe fallen off the shelves back into the limelight using viral something, like whatever it is, whatever your secret sauce is. We help realtors build viral newsletter campaigns. We help this niche do X. Like, you want to have a very concise secret sauce sort of service that you offer that's predicated on what it is that, how you're going to monetize your community. And you want to just kind of tease that in that next paragraph. So it's step one, a good subject line, which you want to continuously, play with and improve and tweak and critique and optimize and iterate. And step two is it has to be personalized, right? Use their name more often rather than less. And step three is, at least in our case, make a very specific reference to something that shows in a complimentary way that you've engaged with their content and can comment intelligently about their work in the world, right? And those three things, most notably the third thing, have really dramatically increased our response rate. And when I say increase, at this point, we're getting more than half of people are writing back. And most are writing back with some degree of curiosity, if not outright interest. No one has yet said not interested, but thanks. Lots of people have said need much more information before I get on a call, or sounds interesting, tell me more, or something like that. Or, as people have said, interested, let's schedule a time to chat. So how would you use this in your own community. Let's say you're building a local directory of some kind, right? Well, one of the real obvious things, and I've never done this, but one of the things I'm recommending to people who are building these local directories is, if you're doing restaurants, say I was just in your pizza place yesterday, and man, I haven't had a slice as good as, that since whenever, or if you're doing work with, landscape, or that's part of your community. Let's say you have this local community. I know many people who are building these, My Listing or Listable or Listing Pro sorts of sites are doing local communities, local directories. You might want to say, I saw your sign in front of, Joe Blow's house, 412 Smith Street, and wow, the landscaping there is beautiful. Or wow, walk by with my wife, and everywhere that I see your landscaping truck, I know there's beautiful landscape to follow. I mean, you just need a really good compliment, and that's not hard to do irrespective of what sort of project or platform you're building. And you're going to find that it exponentially increases people's response rates. And, there are so many cool and creative ways to do this that you're only truly limited by your imagination. The book idea gives me a really, really huge advantage because these are published books that are on Amazon. So, it's it's also very easy to quickly, without buying anything, just get a feel for someone's writing and cite or reference something from the book. They're not thinking whether it was the first chapter or the last chapter. You can also get the last chapter from the book, using any of these book previewing apps, whether it's Google or whether it's Amazon. You can just cycle through a book and get excerpt. Excuse me, that was a non-COVID half cough, half choke. You can go through any of these apps and, Amazon or otherwise, and pick up little blurbs from books from various chapters and just reference those. So, or that's what I'm doing. I mean, I know most folks who are listening to this are not going to be working with authors, but it's equally as powerful to do this in a local community or in a niche community. You can reference people's websites, their Twitter profile, their tweet that they've made, or even things you may have in common, a geographical area that if you're doing, obviously if you're doing a local community, you don't want to reference the fact that you all live in Cleveland because everyone lives in Cleveland in that community, so it's not really novel. But if you live in Cleveland, or if you grew up in Cleveland and you now live in New York, and the person you're reaching out to has on their Twitter profile from Cleveland, well, obviously you can lead with that, right? I mean, you can find something in common to share, either a compliment or a commonality, and you're going to get a huge bump in your response rates. The other thing that's very important, and this is a little bit inspired by a conversation I had with my girlfriend the other day, who was asking about, how allowed, how kosher it may be to include or permissible or legal or whatever to include, to seed a site with profiles, that you didn't request or that they didn't give you permission to include them on your site. Well, the book thing, right, for us, it's why we're doing books. And it's not the reason that we're targeting authors, but it's one of the reasons that I have no concern about reaching out to highbrow people and asking them to be part of this new community because I'm including their book. And I don't need any permission to do that whatsoever. I can take a book, the most famous, meditation teacher's book, and put it on our website and review it, and then ask that teacher, follow the sequence that I just said, and then also mention that we've already featured their book on the profile on our platform, and we'd like to include them or invite them. And then the offer goes here, right? So then what it is actually that you want to do with that author, right? Or in your case, whatever you're working on, with that pizza place or with that designer or landscaper or dentist or car detailer or whatever it is that your niche is or your locality is. All right. So really getting like fine-grained with respect to the compliment that you're offering, getting very specific and being genuine. I mean, really being genuine, and then having that secret sauce offer where you state what you do, right? You're not telling them, you're not selling them anything. You're just saying, we specialize in helping meditation or mindfulness teachers or authors with classic books get rediscovered by the masses, or we help realtors. That was a shitty, kind of USP, but you get the point. We help realtors create viral newsletters that convert into seller listings. We help, therapists or mental health professionals, do X. And I mean, you can just state very cleanly and clearly what it is that you do in the email without being salesy, pushy, slimy, shady, or asking for a sale, which of course you're not going to get with a cold email. You're going to get a call or a contact, and that's the point of this whole approach. Teach what you know, do what you love, wake up the world with your work. As always, thank you so much for listening. If you have questions and you're in our community, feel free to post them in the community comment section. If I'm going to have a PDF with an example of an outreach campaign that we're doing with the exact words, so you can actually copy this. Again, this is for folks in our community. If you're listening to this by dint of the auto-published YouTube version, which comes, as I mentioned earlier, by virtue of our great podcast hosting service, Transistor. Feel free to join our community. I am offering a free call for folks who join in September, and that's a free call with me, 60 minutes, where we talk about things like I'm talking about here and help you build your brand and business, so you get all the course contents in addition to a conversation with myself. All right, and that lasts about another week. Again, I'm recording this on September 22nd, I believe, so about 8 or 9 more days. Thanks so much for listening, as always, and hope this has been helpful, and have a wonderful day.